Hi, my name is Rodrigo Arantes. I'm a book author and founder of the world's first Institute of Gameology, the Institute A Jogada. I research about business gamification, and I'm a Brazilian based and raised in Brazil. And this video is to share you my vision, my strategy on how Brazil can save the US economy from the crash of dollar if we succeed to work together towards the reinventing of the American dream. So, I have published an article more or less 1 year ago, sometime after the election of Jair Bolsonaro as president of Brazil. This article presented the same thesis that Brazil is actually buying the US debt in order to keep world peace. But Brazil is doing that in a violent and an authoritarian way that is actually putting in danger many of the rule in the global patrimony of bio capacity and biodiversity and the forests that Brazil holds. And that's actually essentially the point where all is turning around. Brazil is giving to the US mining companies and other big corporations the access to mining the Amazon, to mining the oil below the Brazilian massive sea land called the Pré-Sal. Brazil is also giving its most powerful corporation, the Petrobras, world leader in deep level oil extraction. And Brazil is actually also giving one of the top airplane builders of the world, the Embraer, to the Boeing Corporation, which some months later revealed to behold massive liabilities around the project of the 737 MAX. And it's possible today that Boeing worth less than Embraer because of this massive liability. But the deal is already done and accepted by Brazilian authorities, Brazilian corrupt authorities, although the European authority has not yet started analyzing the fusion between these two mega airplane companies, which is also another point where this strategy, the ongoing strategy, is already being disrupted. Well, why is all that happening? And how could Brazil, a third world nation with massive problems in social and in the public and field, in management field, in infrastructure, with criminality, violence, or even illiteracy, how could a country like that save the world's biggest or second biggest economy? Well, Brazil beholds the world's largest biocapacity, Brazil as being a tropical country and the largest world tropical country beholds a massive, rich land, and that's something that is very different from a country like Canada, where that is the world's second biggest country, but it's almost impossible to live in most of its areas, and that's not how Brazil is. So the richness below the soil of Brazil are massive, and they worth $1 trillion, and the debt from the United States today is surpassing the level of $21 trillion. And it's safe to say that Amazon forest itself beholds more than this in minerals, because it's mostly unexplored, and this is ignoring the massive value of its biocapacity, its biochemistry that could implode pharmaceuticals empires, and that's another source of a lot of envy from many other nations. And so Brazil is actually already doing this and saving the US economy with its natural resources, the blood of its Indians being killed by aggressive farmers and soy and meat producers, and many other problems going inside Brazil. But I think anyone could ask me now, why a Brazilian economist would be worried on saving the American economy, even knowing that the American economy is actually imposing many externalities to Brazil. And we have been paying this price for 7 years right now. Brazilian economy has severely shrinked, and death rates are raising. People are getting crazy, and we have been living under this stressful environment from these 7 years, and surviving global events like the World Cup and the Olympics, and severely disputed elections, until the rise to power of Jair Bolsonaro, leveraged by the rise of Donald Trump in the USA. And well, the starting point to this, to understand why Brazilians are actually saving the USA from two ways and perspectives, is first to understand that Brazil is for sure a sleeping superpower. This is something that all superpowers of the world can see, but Brazilians yet can't, because they are looking too close. They are looking from the inside, and they are looking without the knowledge of how the other superpowers became superpowers. And because of this, Brazilian military intelligence always found in the United States the perfect example of how to become a superpower. Brazil could not rely on the schools of Russia or China, basically because they are too different from Brazilian reality, Brazilian military reality. and for sure Brazil could not learn with the techniques from the Russian, which are specialized in war on snow and extremely cold temperatures, or to get inspired by Chinese, because Brazilian have bodies and cultures and disciplines very different from martial arts, very different from the Asian people. So uh, the school that Brazil had to follow, the only option Brazil had to follow since the World War II, was to follow the American school, because America showed to Brazil an example of how Brazil could be one day if it could imitate it's the American formula of success. Well, this formula has been useful for some time, for some period, but now this formula is not being successful even for the USA. And this is what is making the whole world into a massive crisis, because China has found its formula. This formula is making China a technological powerhouse that is being capable to disrupt many of USA technologies all at the same time. So, how Brazil could help the USA to defend itself? How could Brazil and USA help to defend all the American nations from the impacts of the aggressively powerful and massive and monstrous industrial park of China that in the last 20 years has decimated Brazilians' most complex industries, and also many of the United States' most complex industries, and taken many of their jobs, although has given us lots of cheap technology and help it to take globalization and information for parts of the world in South America that before China's opening in and industrialization we could not reach. So, what is Brazil doing in all between all this? This is something that most of Brazilians don't know and are not even in the mind state for thinking about. But this has been my research for the last 7 years, and I believe right now I have found the Brazilian formula of success, the Brazilian way of doing business, which is the creative management, the creative project management, in the word jogada, which in Brazil means when you turn around the table of the game, when you make a brilliant move that leaps or makes ole over an obstacle. So, and how this formula can help us all? How can this formula help protecting the road from the crash, from a massive crash and all its side effects, and mostly for South America? What could happen to South America under these situations? Could South America become a massive Colombia with guerrillas and militias all over the continent, which is very possible because many of Brazilian cities live under that daily state of violence and civil criminality. So this formula is the only way where we can solve or we can compete with the Chinese formula, which is better explained if we look into an example of how was developed the first atomic bomb, in the Manhattan Project. How much was the size of New York City in those days, in the first part of the 20th century? Well, New York City had 10 million people. In order to be able to accumulate the critical mass of brains of physics scientists, in order to create a academy of atomic scientists, in order to develop a project like that. We could take this analogy, thinking about you gotta have a 10 million sized city to develop a project that takes some kind of people that you only find 1 in 1 million, like atomic scientists. And China has today 6 cities of the size of New York, which means China has only in massive cities 3 times of United States has. It's like you're going to a car race. You have a car with 2 cylinders and your opponent have a V6. Who is going to win? Well, that's why China has been able to develop technologies like the 5G way ahead of the United States, because besides that, the United States spends most of its economy resources in the U.S. Army and forces, and they use massive amounts of money, and they don't use it very well, because there is a famous joke on how NASA has spent $1 million to develop the pen to write under zero gravity, while the Soviets used the pencil. And this analogy helps us understand how this Brazilian formula, the A Jogada, can help to save the U.S. economy from its inevitable crash. Well, Brazilians have a word called gambiarra. Gambiarra means when you set a solution, improvised solution for things to save money, because you can't pay for the industrial solution for that, the engineer's solution. So the gambiarra means this popular engineering. And Brazilians, since its time, since the beginning of our nation, have been able to be part of the scientific evolutions of the world since the contest for the creation of the airplane. So This has been one example, but there are also other examples. And recently, Brazil has delivered one of the world's finest particle accelerators in the world, called Sirius, which is the most powerful on its level of machinery, and has done this using less resources than other nations, developed nations, do. And how Brazilians are able to do the same with less? Well, because gambiarra, because we have to burn our brains, because if you don't have cash to burn. And these genetics of doing doing the best with almost nothing is the genetics in the DNA of many Brazilian companies today. And despite of these massive shrinking of Brazilian economies, many Brazilian tech industries are being able to grow in the US market. Like recently, the most recent case was a Brazilian marketing company called Rock Content, who the bought a big data company, US company called Scribble Live. They done this even with the against the currency, because the dollar has double its price in Brazil. So how was they able to do this? Because they have a return over investment so much better than many of the US marketing companies. It was in sometimes 15 times above. How? How they do this? Because Brazilian companies, they grow under a stressful environment. So they grow and go to the global market very, very fit. They go like a MMA, multi martial arts fighter. And while the American startups, because they have so much free cash to burn, they go to the fight like obese people, obese and sedentary people. They don't actually are in the fit for global competition, so they become bubbles waiting to blow. And like companies like Netflix, WeWork, Uber, all them are knowingly insolvent and have not found a point of equilibrium. This is not how Brazilian startups grow today. They grow doing traction and monetizing from the day zero, because Brazil startup scene, Brazil marketing economy has developed its own gambiarras to growth hacking, and is now creating its own formula, its own creative business school. A Jogada is just one example of this macroeconomic phenomena. And this formula is actually what can effectively save the US economy. How? Well, I did an experiment in last 1 year in 2019. I did an experiment in the second world's most expensive soccer stadium, the National Stadium of Brasilia. And I did it in a event called a campus party, which is one of the world's largest tech events, we did a workshop of a business gamification auction. So people who entered the sign to this workshop, they received a board like this, and they had to fit all the pieces of their projects or their business in this puzzle in order to create the capital pizza of the business. So players would fit their data on the board, and with the data, with the pieces they did not have, they could go in front of the workshop and share and offer shares of their business to other players, and saying things like, hey, we need a marketing expert, we could give you 10% of our profits, or we need a legal advisor, or we need a developer. So that enabled them to share parts of their business without using money as an interface. So this is what I call ludocracy. It's the upgrade from bureaucracy using this third millennium, these 21st century management tools, like the post-it, like the board game. So I have more videos about that, but the point here is how much money are we able to make doing this? Well, on the information age we live, information, structured data is money. So how Facebook, how Google, they monetize their business? Well, they organize, they structured our data. The data we give them, they organize and make that available for marketing purposes. And why do we not profit with our data? Because we don't structure. How can we profit over this? So we have to put this data, these pieces, in a puzzle, in a structured geometry, in order to organize it. Once you do that, you have structured the contract of a business that can start from the valuation of $20,000, even in Brazil, or 20,000 reais in Brazil. This is the basic valuation of a starting project, of app or website or anything around this. And the better you structure these data, the more the valuation of your company grows. So sometimes you can grow your valuation for 2 times if instead of finding a new client, paying cash, you find a business partner who brings to your team a strategic knowledge, like being a big data analyst. This way of seeing and structuring information helps the entrepreneur and the investors to read different business and compare them under a methodology with precision and with language that enables them to communicate, even when they analyze different projects. And how much this can change the Brazilian and the US economies. Well, Brazil is facing a problem of being the road the country of soccer, and owning 12 stadiums that most of the time stay in idle, while they have massive costs to be um, even taken care. And if we let's suppose if we use this stadium for a massive hackathon for the same time of a soccer match. Let's talk about a massive developing game, collaborative game. Instead, we watch the 11 players in two teams playing a soccer match. What if we put 100,000 people in a stadium so that they all play together? What could we build with that in 2 hours, in the 2 hours of a soccer match? And the answer in my experiment is we could build another stadium, of the size of the world's second most expensive stadium. So this is what exponentiality means. If we put together 100 people to play a hackathon, play A Jogada in 2 hours, we could do 2 billion reais. We could do $2 billion if we do that in the US. So we could do another stadium. This is particles acceleration. But we would do that developing something like many startups or possible unicorns, portfolio of solutions. We could use it for public contests, and we could use it as entertainment too. So this is a massive business, and this could help us to use smaller cities to be able to have the same cognitive power of the massive Chinese cities, like those mega cities of the size of New York. So this is the first way American countries can compete with China. Um, this is also how these nations is only capable to resist, to compete with these uh, Chinese cities, because while Chinese cities they cooperate together, the massive cities of America in North and South America, they are always competing against each other to impose their position on the hierarchy. So New York doesn't coordinate with Sao Paulo and Buenos Aires and Mexico City. New York actually wants to always orchestrate and set the rules and cash on Sao Paulo and Buenos Aires and Mexico City. So this is not how we are going to be capable of competing with China, because if we face this challenge, we are not a prepared team. We are because we are facing internal competition. So this is a simple situation of prisoner's dilemma. There is no outcome where one or other will be winner or loser. We all are going to be winners or losers together. We are all together becoming as rich and prosper as US or Canada, or we all are going to become poor and trashed like Venezuela or Bolivia by years of clash on the cities. So the other way and the other side of this strategy, this solution, is how we are going to create a new fundament, a new base for a new backing for the currency of dollar, which is the only possible for us to do the agridolar, or the crypto agridolar. Brazil is one of the most competitive players on the fintech industry. Actually, one of the largest, perhaps the largest fintech of Americas today is a Brazilian company called Nubank. So, um, these revolution of blockchain is only going to find its full potential when it finds the problem of the a millennial problem of the agriculture funding. The agriculture funding is actually the problem that creates the industry of banking. And agriculture is a complex problem of funding, because it takes a lot of time for giving results back, and that's why there are cities like São Paulo who became massive centers, because they managed to become intermediates between producers and exporters. So agriculture finance is the most ancient capitalist industry we know, and Brazil is the future of agriculture, because the only frontier that is still not well explored by modern agriculture is the tropical lands. That because agriculture was not developed by tropical people historically, because tropical people had forests, so they had not to do this work of seed and managing a farm. They could just only receive what the nature itself has produced. But now Brazil has accumulated technology and knowledge on developing the potential of tropical agriculture, and Brazil has 8 million kilometers of space where it can be applied to back a new economy, and doing this with a perfect preservation of the nature. It's called syntropic agriculture. I recommend you look about it. But this form of agriculture takes a lot of funding, because it's a complex, it's more artistic work. It's not something that you can use a machine to do. And the solution for that was not available until few years ago, before we learned about blockchain. So now it's possible to solve this problem. And Brazil has this technology on working on these tropical lands, and has this technology to turn them on fintechs. Now it's only about US entrepreneurs and investors bring their money to Brazil to develop the future of agritechs. And that can become what in the future can become a larger one of the largest economies, and the only possible way to balance the power of the Eurasia. Eurasia has five people, and that's something you we have to think about, because if Eurasia desires that, they could like turn the American continent into something like Cuba if they want. If they block the economies of U.S. and South America, they could do that, and they don't need us to be here. They don't need us to exist, because they even already did the Silk Roads before America was populated by Europeans. So the only way us to be able to balance the power of Eurasia with five times our population is if we cooperate and be very creative and strategical, and learn the meaning of the word gambiarra, which is also the meaning of jogada, and invest the future of our nations on the creation of a new currency, which I am naming Agridolar. But you can learn more about all this vision on my book. Right now, in the next coming months, we are going to make a experiment of weekly hackathons for accelerating startups, and we are making a portfolio and a commission of Brazilian entrepreneurs to showcase them into the Tokyo Olympics events, and participating the event, the Global Summit event, which is an American initiative led by Melanie St. James, also the CEO of OnePie, and they are a global network of cooperation and creative and innovators. And we are going to showcase this there in the Tokyo Olympics for the global audience. And we are showing how business gamification can be used, and how quantum mechanics can be used, enabled by gaming, to make money from the structured data we already have, but we don't see as valuable. So this is the message. I would like to ask people to help us developing this work, to help us on our Patreon page, and to follow our social media, and let's start growing this network, and opening this network, taking this message beyond, because the coming crash can be something, the most traumatic thing in our lives, but also can be the spark of a revolution, of a creative revolution, that will transform our societies to what they are meant, they're designed to be. The creativity, the dream, the American dream of a society where everybody is free to be an inventor and invent the life it wants to live. This is the message of the book. There are a lot of other information there, but this is something that now I will be bringing to more videos, bringing the results of my experiments and try to develop this communication between Brazilian and US audience. Thank you and bye bye.